Hello, I'm Andrew Bush. I'm the director of the Bethlehem Institute of Peace and Justice here at Bethlehem Bible College in, of course, Bethlehem. And we are so very pleased today to have Mr. Tanas Al-Kassis with us to speak as part of our Global Peacemakers Speak series. And Tanas has a wide ministry both here in Palestine and throughout the Middle East. So welcome, Tanas.
Thank you very much, Andy. Good to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
As you said, my name is Tanas Al-Kassis, which means Tanas the priest, because I come from a Greek Orthodox family, so the last name is priest. I was born here, actually down just the shepherd field.
Oh.
A while ago.
Yes.
Let's keep that secret. I lived and worked here. My first job actually was at Bethlehem Bible College. I was the accountant here.
Oh.
And then I moved to World Vision, then I moved from there to Romania, then back to here. I work with Musalaha in peace building and reconciliation. Then I moved to the UK to work with the Church Mission Society.
Great. Well, so you have been very busy through these years.
Very, very busy.
And with the Church Mission Society, what is your role?
So I cover the work in Europe, Middle East, and North Africa. We have missionaries that are serving in these areas. We have also local partners and strategic partners that we support as the local churches. For example, like the Bethlehem Bible College, that's one of our partners in Palestine that we work with.
As we begin, just as you have seen the church in the Middle East, how would you evaluate it? I mean, is it going down? Is it coming up? Is it holding steady? What is the strength of the church in the Middle East?
Yeah, depends which part of the Middle East. For example, if you look at places like Lebanon, there is some growth in it. A lot of the refugees who came in, there have been some growth in there. Jordan is, I think, almost the same. Palestine, I think they're struggling a little bit, partly because the whole political situation, the economic situation, young people just feel hopeless. They feel there's no future. They go to university, they study, they earn the degree, and then they don't know what they're going to do. And I think this is affecting them going to the church. Sadly, also, some of the church leaders have not been very positive in the country and the way they dealt with different situations. I know there's still division among the churches, which is really sad, because I believe if we come together and work together, we'll be much stronger. But sadly, that division has been from so many years.
Yes. Well, one of the things that I find interesting about your role and about your life is you were, as you say, born here in Palestine in Bet Zahor near Bethlehem, but you're living in England.
Yeah.
Working with the CMS there, and you travel back and forth between England and Palestine fairly frequently. So I think that you have a unique perspective to speak to both some of the misunderstandings of people in the UK and in the West, because you're hearing what they say and think about Palestinians. And you also have, to a certain extent, a little bit of an outsider's view on the Palestinian community, because you're out enough that when you come back in with a little bit of an objective outsider's perspective. That bicultural life is very important because it provides insights for people in both communities. And let's look at the Christians in the UK to begin with, or just people in general. In England, what would you say some of their misunderstandings about Palestinians are?
Well, first let me say there have been some changes in the Western churches, which is really good, which is very positive. But I think the biggest understanding is the labeling. So once you say you're Palestinian, you're immediately linked to either terrorists or belong to an extremist group, which is really sad. The other thing, if you talk about the political situation, then you are called anti-Semitic. I'll just give you a simple example. I was on my motorcycle. I love riding bikes and motorcycles, and I was meeting at one of the dealership, and one person asked me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm Palestinian." And he looked at me and said, oh, so you're a terrorist. Now, he was joking, but I think unconsciously, that's the first thing that came into his mind. And my response back is, I am going to terrorize you until you believe in Jesus. And we had a good laugh. But this is the idea. The minute you come up and you start talking, even when you talk in churches, sometimes they'll come to you and ask you, so are you a converted Jew or a converted Muslim? So they do not understand that actually there are
They're
believers
Christians
and
here.
Christians here in the land. So that's one of the main things. So we are already labeled
Right.
as somebody bad because what they hear in the media. But the reality is there's so many amazing people in the country.
Yes.
Sadly, we do not have the same chances they have in the UK or in the West in how to excel and be better at what what you want to do. Have a hope, have a vision, have a future. And I think this is really important. So I would say to the churches, you need to come and visit.
Yes.
You need to involve more Palestinians, meet with them, talk to them. You'll understand their story, you'll understand the situation they live in. It's very easy for us to prejudge, because when you label or prejudge, then it takes the responsibility out of you, so you don't have to worry about what happened to that people. So you're avoiding your responsibility.
Yes.
And as a Christian, we need to love each other and take care of each other. We need to love everybody else around us. Even the Lord said, love your enemy.
Yes.
But it's so easy to label somebody and then you take out, say, well, I wash my hand out of it. I need
Right.
nothing to do with that.
Yeah, just make them the enemies and just
It's much easier.
let it go with that.
I did a talk at one of the big conferences in the UK called the hardest people to reach are the people you love most and the people you hate or fear most. And it's a true thing
Yes.
because we avoid it.
That's true. Let me ask you, you say you've sensed there has been some change in the church in England. How would you describe that change?
I think theologically there have been some change. There have been a lot more writing about the theology of the land or the end time theology. Thankfully for people like Mundir, now it's coming local, or other people here, Hanna Katanashu, Salim Munayyer, and others who have written. And now the Bethlehem Bible College doing the whole Peace and Justice Center, which is really amazing because then students could come here and actually learn and hear the other side story and understand. I think that change has been really important. It's always been somebody from the West writing about it, but now you have people who lived it, writing about it and talking about this is how we feel. This is what it means to love your neighbor. This is how it means to have justice and advocacy.
Yes.
And I think this have changed the mentality of the church. And of course, seeing the reality of what happened to Palestinians, social media, internet have changed.
Yes, it's opened people's eyes.
Exactly. So now
Yeah.
they don't just rely on the mainstream media, they actually see others and people tell their stories.
Yes.
And I think that have made a difference.
And there's some great sources on the internet too, Eye on Palestine and others, and
Come and see.
come and see.
Yeah.
And people can see what the situation is and what occupation means. If you were to describe, I mean, one of the things I have found that, first of all, is hardest for people in the West to understand is what occupation means. First of all, just ideologically, many people have been trained to say, oh, there's no such thing as the occupation because the land is all Israel, so how could there be occupation? But yet there was a Palestinian society here, and that Palestinian society is controlled by a military which is not their own. And by any definition, that's occupation. So when you describe what occupation is to people, how do you describe it?
Well, the whole idea that for me to go from here to Jerusalem, which is about 15 minutes,
Right.
I need to get a special permit. I need to get through a checkpoint and maybe get stopped even in the way in. And it's not very easy to do that.
Yes.
The occupation, for me as somebody living in the UK, I have my parents live here. Every time I want to come and visit, I have to fly to Jordan, then from Jordan cross the bridge to be able to come here. And the amount of time it takes and more money that we have to pay to get here.
Because you're not allowed to use the Tel Aviv airport.
No, even though I'm a British citizen, they don't even recognize me as a British citizen. I'm a Palestinian for them.
Yes.
Even because my ancestors are Palestinian, I may be denied entry. So this is one thing. The other thing, you see the whole situation. I mean, we were just joking about it yesterday with my cousin. We're talking about here we have 3G on our mobile phone. And I said to them, why don't you have 4G? Well, Israel not allowing us to have 4G. Just recently they allowed 3G. I said, but why? Why? I mean, what's going to bother them? Well, this is the occupation power. They could do whatever they want.
Yes.
The other thing is you never feel safe, even though you are supposed to be under Palestinian Authority, but the Israeli army could come in anytime they want.
Yes. Yes.
They could just enter, break in your house, arrest you, whatever they want to do.
Yes. There's no need for a search warrant or anything like that.
No, that doesn't.
That protects people in the West.
Never existed.
Never existed.
Never existed.
Yeah.
We always say the soldier you meet is the government, the judge, and the jury.
Yes.
So they could do whatever they want.
Yes. Yeah, it's difficult for people to understand until they come and begin to see some of the circumstance and that occupation creates like a two-tier sort of life where one people is privileged. Someone can immigrate from Brooklyn next week and live anywhere they want, you know, on the West Bank or in Israel proper, come and go freely, while someone born here in Bethlehem, born here in Jerusalem, can't move, you know, 10 kilometers without permission.
Even take it further than that. Palestinian who have resident in Israel, if they marry somebody Palestinian from the West Bank, they cannot even get them residency to come and live with them in Israel. Yeah. That's how bad things are. The problem, I think the West denies the occupation, and they keep blaming Palestinian attack in Israel and Israel's security. Well, the reality is, I mean, if you just logically think about it, Israel will never have security until the Palestinians are secure.
Yes.
And that's just something they need to know. I mean, it's really a common sense. You don't need to be a PhD student to understand that.
Yes.
Security have to happen to both. And as long as one people are treated really bad, they're never going to be peace.
Yes.
Because people want to excel. You know, if you don't have food on your table, you're going to go fight. If you lost hope, you're going to go fight. And that's the problem. But when people have the resources they need and they have the freedom to be able to do things like they want to, then peace may happen.
Yes.
I know people keep saying, well, when Jesus comes back. Well, I really disagree with them. I think you could have peace because Jesus is with us, in us, and we could seek that. But we need to do something about it. But as long as we deny the occupation, there's never going to be peace.
Yes. And I think also that we can see with this that to love Israel doesn't mean that, or to recognize these issues that you're discussing, doesn't mean that you cease to love Israel. For someone who is a supporter of Israel, to love a country is to seek its best. And the best would be for there to be peace. And part of that demands that social problems be addressed, not ignored. To love your country doesn't mean you look the other way while your country does terrible things. It means to help your country be a more noble, righteous nation.
I mean, exactly. If you have two children and one of your child does something wrong, it doesn't mean you're going to stop loving them if you tell them you're doing wrong.
Yes.
Actually, you tell them they're doing wrong because you care about them.
Yes.
But if you close your eyes and ears on them and let them do whatever they want, they're going to end up really messing up.
Yes.
And the other thing for Christian in the West, I mean, for the churches, it's fine to love Israel, but don't love them at the expense of the Palestinian.
Yes.
Again, if you have two children and you want to prove your love to your one child, you don't tell them, I hate your brother, to prove the love to the child. You could still love both, and you could prove your love different way. But yes, to say, I hate your brother, I love you more, it doesn't work. We need to get out of that mentality. We are pro-Palestinian or we are pro-Israel. We need to be, and I believe, pro-justice or pro-equality, pro-peace with each other.
Yes.
And that's what we need to look at.
Yes. And these are good points. Let's look at the other side of the coin as you're traveling in and out of the country. When you come back into Palestine and Palestinian society, what do you see that you feel is a hindrance to peace on the Palestinian side?
Oh, where should I start?
That may be a sensitive question, so I'm
No,
sorry. I
no, it's
hope
fine.
not.
I think the first thing you'll notice, people are more stressed out. You know, you pass somebody by the car and they're angry. And you go, why are they angry? And I think it's stressed. When you lose hope, really, when you lose hope, you know nothing going to work. You just become really down. And that stresses people out. So that's the first thing I see. So you become careless. I see people throwing garbage out of their cars. I see the street are very dirty. Why? This is your home. Why don't you clean it up? We need to stop blaming also the occupation for the things that happen in our own backyard.
Yes.
We need to take the action. We need to take that step. And I hope there is some changes. I believe there's a younger generation or younger leaders that coming up. I'm not talking about political leaders. I'm talking about the church and the society that are trying to make a difference. The other thing, there is corruption. I mean, we have to be honest. There is corruption in the country. When you're in a place where you get so much funding from outside, it leads sometimes to corruption. And I think we need to tackle that too. We need to start looking about honesty and how we help each other to take out the individualistics out of us and start working with each other. I think it's important. And I think this has been hindering to peace. But again, people don't trust the government. People do not trust anything with the peace talk. They just gave up.
So they just see sort of both sides as being corrupt in the situation.
Well, of course. I mean, you know, they feel everybody's making money out of this war. Both
Right.
sides are making money out of
Right.
this war and this conflict.
Yeah.
And it breaks your heart. You know, we do have some good people, but sadly, they kind of give up in the end. They start really strong. They want to do anti-corruption. They want to change, but then they go back in there. And the situation doesn't help because, you know, when violence happens on both sides, it affects the whole atmosphere. You feel you go one step forward and 3 steps back.
Yes.
We need to start from home. We need to start here as Palestinians. We need to start caring to our community. You know, I come here and I see the streets. They're really bad. We need to fix those. We need to fix clean the garbage. We need to start treating each other better. You know, show kindness to each other. But again, I said there's so much stress. I think depression probably is one of the biggest problems in Palestine. People may not recognize it because they don't talk about it, but I think it's there. And you feel it when you talk to people. Now, again, I'm not going to generalize, but you see that a lot when you talk to people.
Yes. Just that they're traumatized and stressed out from the circumstance.
Well, the whole trauma of occupation that you cannot actually go, if you want to go to the beach, you cannot. If you
Right.
want to go somewhere else, you cannot. If you want to travel to any country, take a holiday, you cannot. It's not that easy.
Right.
Of course, that brings a trauma. The trauma of the occupation is huge. And then the fear. You know, fear produces so much anxiety. And the fear that, you know, anytime, just recently, my cousin wanted to go to Hebron, and he's scared. He said, well, if by mistake I hit the gas a little bit stronger or I turn my steering wheel wrong, I may get shot. This is also a fact situation. And in one sense, Israel,
That's
you know,
sad to hear that.
yeah, the army have they could do whatever they want. And all they have to say, he tried to kill us and shoot you. And there's no proof. You cannot do anything. There's no law, there's no court, there's no judges. When you're a Palestinian, anything could happen to you.
Yes.
So that fear affects the way you do things. You feel you don't want to go anywhere. You don't want to do anything.
Yes. Yeah, I think that many in the West see Israel as a very modern nation that has huge tech companies that have moved here and has, you know, offices and there's a strong startup culture in Israel to start new tech companies, etc. And so it's hard for people to understand this other side of Israel that acts like it's in a different era and it does not act like a modern nation. And I think it's such a contradiction to what people see and think about Israel that they're like, what? Huh? You know, it's hard for them to grasp the reality of what's going on.
And the big sentence I always hear, Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East.
Right, exactly, things like this.
But then explain to me how democracy works when you say this is a Jewish state. When you say this is Jewish state, you're saying this is only for Jews. So how can you be democratic when you have non-Jewish people living with you?
Yes.
But people kind of close their eyes on this. They're not going to say it. And I don't understand why the West doesn't say anything. They always say to the Palestinians, you need to recognize Israel. But they never ask the occupier to recognize the victim.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense.
Right. It's the power is in one side.
And sadly, if you criticize Israel, then you become anti-Semitic. So people are so scared of that also. So I feel the world is closing their eyes and ears when Israel is doing something wrong against the Palestinian. But then they are so glorifying Israel when there are things that are happening that are like tech companies, things like that. But the whole world investing in Israel.
Yes.
How much actually investing happening in the Palestinian area?
Right.
Because again, it's the people you really don't care about. And sometimes it feels like we're worth nothing.
Yes.
Comparing to the Israeli.
Right.
It's like when you hear a killing, if 10 Palestinians died, it's sad. One Jewish, it's a tragedy. Why? We're all created in God's image. We should be all equal as human. I don't want to see anybody killed or died
Yes.
through the conflict.
Yes.
But sad, this is how it works. I mean, just look now at what happened in Ukraine.
Right.
And I'm bringing this point up because it really got to me so difficult time when I was listening to the news. When a news presenter comes up and say, well, the Ukrainian are people civilized. They're not like the Iraqi, the Syrian, or the Afghanistani, or the Palestinian. They are, these are civilized, blue eyes and blonde. And like, excuse me? I mean, are you saying we're not a human? But they are? I mean, I'm really sad for what happened in Ukraine. But how the world reacted, even my own country I live in now, in the United Kingdom, they accepted to take 20,000 Syrian refugees only. But they opened the border for the Ukrainian. Why? I mean, I want them to bring them in, but why the way you deal with one people different than the others? Okay, they may say, well, some of them bring troubles. Well, yeah, because they come from also very traumatized areas.
Yes.
So they need help. But the way they look at us is like we're less than human.
Yes. It's a tragedy. I mean, these are stereotypes that the West has to overcome. I think the West has not really dealt with its attitude towards Arab peoples and come to terms with the prejudice that's there. Well, we have to close, and I just want to ask you as we close, do you have hope?
I always have hope. I live on hope. And I believe when people start seeing each other as human, as God creation, it will make a big difference. That's the reason I'm anti-wall. I'm anti-separation. I think people need to meet each other and to understand that we go through the same thing. We go through the same difficulty. When it rains on everybody. When it's sunshine on everybody. The division creates fear. It creates presumptions about other people. You start thinking badly of them. When we label them, we avoid them. I think we need to get rid of that. We need to start talking. And that's the best way forward. We need the churches to say to Israel, instead of we bless you and pray for you, well, bless and pray for them by saying, talk to your neighbors, open the borders, let's have peace. If you're doing something wrong, then you're doing it wrong. I think that's what comes. I believe in love. I really believe that we need to be showing love. We need to seek peace. Yeah, I am frustrated with the whole situation, but that doesn't mean I hate Israel or hate the Jews. No, I don't. I hate some of the actions they do and the occupation, of course, as much as I hate when our own government do bad things and there's corruption in it.
Yes.
But this is our duty as citizens to speak out against wrong things.
Yes.
But we need to keep that hope going by living it ourselves, starting from our own home.
Well, you give me hope, and I really appreciate that. And you're a very unique spokesman for the Palestinian Christian community, and I really want to thank you,
you.
for this time. And thank you all for joining us to hear Tanas Al-Kassis speak in this part of our Global Peacemaker Speaks series. And we'll look forward to sharing with you again.